is a healthy congregation? You know, if there's things that we could point to and say, if we can get these things right, or these might be some signs that we are healthy as a congregation, across the diocese, this is where we landed on having a compelling vision, having a clear discipleship path, uplifting and inviting worship, welcoming and connecting ministries, blessing our community, faithful financial practices, and inspiring and capable leadership. And I'll give you a in connecting ministries. Most places I go to, I would say, are not welcoming groups. Every congregation I talk to says we're friendly. Every congregation I talk to says we'd love to have more people here and new people here coming through our doors. Most are not great with this experience and what it's like coming through. And so having that be one of the vital signs is really, really helpful. And to shift that into a numbers and what does that mean and what are some key vital signs? Again, before we go into a strategic plan, before we set out to do what it is that we are looking to do, we need to assess and where are we at today. So these are numbers that correlate and are attached to those different vital signs here. And I'm going to walk through a definition of these so you have these. You should know that any one of these vital signs does not necessarily mean you're healthy, right? So we could be a growing congregation, and there are certainly expressions that we see across the church that you see a church maybe that's really growing, but are they healthy? A growing church does not necessarily mean it's a healthy church. But when you look at these collective group of numbers, and if you think of it as almost a mutual fund, or if we are feeling like we're thumbs up on 6, 7, 8, of these vital signs, maybe not all of them, there starts to be a sense that maybe we are showing some signs of health. So ASA, or our average Sunday attendance, that's an obvious one. We'd like to see that growing. It's not growing just for numbers' sake, but I just believe, again, when we have a great vision of where we're headed, when we have a compelling experience from anything that we do, from Sundays and other things throughout the week, that a guest comes in and says, "Oh, that was amazing," or "There's something that captured my attention there. I want to go back." When we have a compelling experience, and when we feel great about what's happening in the life of our parish, we're going to invite others to do that. Come on, you need to check this out. Come with me. It's not going to be what you think, and I'll buy you lunch afterwards. Okay, so just come with me. Why? Because we are confident, and we just know that this experience is bringing transformation in our own lives. We want to invite people, so that's an indicator of growth. First-time guests is not that we want to have one first-time guest. That's really a 1.0 is a metric on there. And here's the definition around that: is if our ASA pre-pandemic was 75 people, over the course of a year, we would like to see at least 75 first-time guests coming through the door. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio that we're looking for. So if our parishes, if we're running 200 pre-pandemic, we would like to get to a place that we see 200 first-time guests. If we were 40 pre-pandemic, we'd like to see 40 guests coming through. And so that is a metric around how are we doing with our front door and new people coming in. The average age of our parish, again, kind of like what we looked at in that life cycle, is that if we see the average age of the parish inching up, or it's much higher than the average age of the community, that may be an indicator of health or something to look at. So we'd like to see that be similar. There may be some exceptions to that, depending on if we have a specific focus on who it is that we're trying to connect with and reach that is different. You'd have to make the case for it. But in most cases, that's not the experience that I have back in the teams of what they are looking to do and who they're trying to connect with. So what's that average parish age look like compared to the community around us? And we can simply get that from demographics, our region. With the pandemic, we getting data and information. We'd like to see an increase of new people in our database. So with online activities, sometimes we're getting information on people that they haven't stepped foot in person in the life of our congregation, but they have connected online and they've maybe engaged a bit online. And so they may be in our database. So through the pandemic, that's bringing some focus to a database is there. A percentage of laity in ministry and service. So we have a 45% number there. That is what percentage of adults plus students divided by your ASA are serving at least once a month in the life of the parish. And I'm going to use this and say that generally that's going to be inside, related to specific activities that are happening at or near the church, because there's another metric that we have around community engagement later that is looking at outside the four walls. But so 45%, we know that serving through data and research that's been done on hundreds of thousands of people that are pursuing this Jesus way, that serving changes us from the inside out. There's something about our hands and feet being engaged in this ministry that is important. And so that's an indicator of health. The number of sacramental commitments, that is our baptisms, confirmations, and receptions divided by our ASA number, again there, that we should see an increase there, where people have made commitments, tangible commitments in their faith journey there. That's an important distinction. Similar to attendance, the increased ASA and increasing pledging units, we should see that rising as well. Our heart is connected to our money, right? If you ever look at your budget, there's a good chance that when you start sending money someplace, you're interested, right? If you purchase something, or for me, and the story I tell is that when I started sending a college payment, for my kids, suddenly I'm interested in that college and I'm engaged and I want to know. There's a heart connection to where our resources go. And that's why as we look at that engagement from our finances, that's important and very personal for people to be able to do that in supporting the mission. Community engagement is outside the four walls. What percentage of our adults and students divided by ASA is engaged in some type of community engagement, which may be issues around justice. It may be simply having clarity around neighboring. There's some efforts that some groups have done around be a great neighbor. Are there 3 to 5 people that you're connecting with that are expanding that circle, right? It's expanding that circle so that I'm creating a room in my life to intentionally engage with others, to be a great friend, and maybe someday that they end up connecting into the life of a parish, maybe not. But I am engaged in the community around myself, right? And so those are a few examples of what community engagement look like. And so what percentage of adults and students divided by ASA are involved in some form of community engagement? Ratio of leaders to attendees. So like we talked about, losing leaders in the wrong side of that life cycle. For round numbers, if our ASA generally has been around 100, I would like to see at least 10 clear leaders identified that they are integrated into serving and leading within the ministry. So that they actually have a team or responsibilities of people that they're leading and have some influence and relationship with, versus they're a great volunteer doing great things, but they don't actually have a team. And so when we do work from a structure and organization, we're intentionally bringing in and looking for that type of ratio. How are we doing in our leadership development? What we know is that in the surveys with clergy, only 9% say that they do a great job of developing leaders. And so that's an indicator of health and a clear correlation of what we see with many congregations. 75% involved in spiritual practices. This may be hard to measure and gauge, because we are relying on what is happening in the walk and the life of the people that are part of our congregations, but they should be demonstrating that. We're in this together. So the percent engaged with diocesan work is that we could have 10% involved in looking at the global community effort of what's happening across 80 plus parishes. Continuing education, this is related to that leadership development. Do we have clear training and resourcing for those leaders? It's one thing to say someone's a leader, it's another thing to resource them and helping them take steps in developing them. And then our giving to expenses at 105%. Among some of the congregations, we see that Plate Plus Pledge over their expenses is running only about 76% of overall. We'd like to have it where Plate Plus Pledge covers your core expenses in not relying on multiple other revenue streams from the healthiest perspective. And that should be growing, ideally, if our engagement from a financial standpoint is growing as well. So that gives some context to numbers there, to those, the vital signs that were put out there of how can we actually measure health.